How do you know that it's almost college football season? I'm not talking about the calendar. I'm not talking about you look and you see, oh, it's almost August. It's about time for them to start playing football. I'm talking about what internally and from a census standpoint tells you that we are about to get the college football season. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Tuesday, July 25th, 2023, the last one in history, so we're about to make a day out of it. Welcome into the Hard Count. If you're new, welcome. We talk ball here every single day. We're live on Tuesdays, live on Thursdays, as we are right now, 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, also on podcasts. Wherever you get them, you can find the Hard Count with us right here. We talk ball. We're glad to have you a part of this. We got a lot to jump into. We have 5-6 topics to tackle today. I mean, we're talking everything from a little peek at week one, some questions we need answers to. Florida State LSU on that Sunday, going to be a big one. What do we make of that matchup, and what are the things that we need to see to determine that matchup? Also, Florida and Utah on the Thursday. Remember, Utah came to the Swamp last year and gave them all they can handle. Florida now going to Salt Lake City. Some key questions in that game. Also, College Game Day. Going to Charlotte for South Carolina, North Carolina. That'll be a good one. We got some questions in that one as well. Also, on Monday, we get Clemson and Duke. I'm telling you, man, week 0 is going to be phenomenal. Week 1 is going to be exceptional. College football is essentially back. And one of the reasons that we know it's back is we're talking a whole lot of recruiting. Like, notice how June, July, you start seeing some of these really big decisions being made because a lot of these kids, a lot of these five-star kids want to have their decision finalized before they get to their senior season. They want it behind them. They've been recruited since they're 8th graders. They want to finally put a verbal commitment to where they want to go and eventually sign on National Signing Day. Who are some of those top recruits that are going to have a really high level of impact when it comes to Saturdays and on the school that they could potentially pick? We got some committed kids, some uncommitted kids. We're going to talk about Georgia. Just landed the #1 linebacker in the country last night on this very channel. Interesting position they find themselves in as they have a current commit at the linebacker position that is set to make a, quote, final decision. Anytime you're committed somewhere and you still have a final decision to be made, it leaves a little bit of a question mark. So we'll unpack that one and just where Georgia stands as a whole. The Pulse, the Program series, rolling right along. What do we make of the Matt Rhule era at Nebraska that is about to kick off in Lincoln? We'll give you our thoughts, give you the internal pulse as well as that pulse within the building for Matt Rhule and company. Also, how we know it's college football season. We asked the question to start the entire show. We got a lot of great responses from y'all. We can't waste too much more time. Like I said, this show could probably go 2-3 hours if we wanted to, but we understand that we all have other things to do the rest of the day. Well, not us here, but y'all have other things to do the rest of the day. We're glad to have you here. There's a lot on your plate. We say it every single show, and I think it's important we say it right now. You have a ton going on. You got work. Some of y'all are listening during your internships. Some of y'all are listening while you're watching the kids. However you're listening, however you're watching, we're glad to have you here. You have a million things on your plate. Just hang out for a second. We're just talking college football. This is an escape for a lot of y'all that get away from whatever you have going on in the daily lives. So we're grateful to have you a part of this, and we're grateful to be that for you. All right, no more time to be wasted. Let's jump right into it. Let's take a quick peek at week 1 of the college football season. We honor week 0. We respect week 0. I cannot wait for Hawaii at Vandy. I cannot wait for Notre Dame and Navy to play in Ireland. But even so, it's a nice little appetizer to the entree that will be week 1. And there's some questions that we need answers because we've got some enormous games. And the game that I think most of us have circled is that Sunday game in Orlando. LSU and Florida State had an instant classic kind of a game last year in New Orleans. They said, run that back, Turbo. We're in Orlando this year. So what are some of the questions that we need answers to as it pertains to that game specifically? A lot of buzz right now around Florida State. A lot of buzz around Jordan Travis, the quarterback for the Noles. And my question in this game for Florida State is, does Jordan Travis meet the moment? Because in a game like this with college football playoff implications in the week 1 of the season, this is the kind of game where your stud quarterback steps up and just says, look, I'm him today. We saw AR do it last year against Utah in the Swamp. I'm not saying I need Jordan Travis to have Anthony Richardson kind of numbers, but I would say I think that there's a lot of opportunity for him in this game to absolutely flash. Not just because they got Keon Coleman in the portal, not just because they got Jaheim Bell in the portal, not just because they got Johnny Wilson, but because of what LSU has in the secondary. I'm not knocking the personnel they have. I'm just saying it's week 1. It'll be their first game together, and they're still trying to, I think, get settled on the back end there. So the personnel will be good, but I'm telling you, I think there's going to be some opportunity for Florida State to take some shots deep. And to be real, I think LSU's defensive front is going to ask Jordan Travis to beat them. I think that front seven with Harold Perkins, Mason Smith, who was hurt in this game a season ago, and they're really excited about this coming year, they're going to do their best to take away the run game. They're going to say, Jordan Travis, if you beat us through the air, so be it, but we're going to make you prove it. And so for Florida State to win this game, you need your stud to step up, because this is the game where whoever loses, you lose your mulligan for the college football playoff. You can still win the conference, you can still make a run and finish the year with one loss, but the reality is, when it comes to Selection Sunday, if you're not undefeated, more than likely you are leaving your fate in somebody else's hands. And both these teams have aspirations to make that Final Four and to be in the big dance. This game will have massive implications. It is a massive legacy game, in my opinion, for Jordan Travis. On the other side of that, how about Jaden Daniels? We sat down with him at SEC Media Days, and the first question we asked him is, man, there's been a lot of talk about y'all wanting to stretch the ball downfield a little bit more, be a little bit more vertical in the pass game. And I loved his answer to that. He's like, honestly, it's a mindset thing. Like, we just have to kind of let it rip. When we got plays there, we got playmakers on the outside, like, let's get after it. And so my question is, that's great to say, but how far along is LSU in that approach? How far along are they from behind closed doors doing that during spring football and in fall camp to week one, to game one, to making that a reality? Because last year for LSU, I mean, the average completion was 6 yards. The longest completion was 22. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's not good enough to beat Florida State. It wasn't good enough last year. It won't be good enough this coming season. And the reason why that is, you got to make this secondary of Florida State play honest with you. If those safeties are triggering down to 7 yards, or they're, heck, maybe even playing in the box at times, they can help in run support. And when they can help in run support, that means they're probably not worried about all the real estate they're leaving open on the back end, because they're daring Jaden Daniels to throw the ball deep. So what I'd watch for in this game, if I'm an LSU fan, I'm saying early on, do we get a deep pass to Kyron Lacey streaking down the sideline? Maybe it's a seam route over the middle. Do we at least just swing the bat a little bit and try to hit one out of the park? Because even just trying to do that, even just throwing it deep and having it be broken up and incomplete, okay, whatever, we got 2nd and 10, that forces the defense to at least understand that, oh, okay, they could try that. Oh, okay, they're willing to let it rip a little bit here. It's not going to be this dink and dunk thing we saw last year. It's not going to be 6 yards of completion. They're going to challenge us vertically. They're going to keep us honest. That's all I'm asking LSU to do. Just keep them honest. Because if you can keep them honest, you keep that defense off balance. I've said it before, it's not specific to Florida State, but for LSU, I don't know how you defend them if you can't add extra numbers to the box. Because Jaden Daniels can run the football, Josh Williams can run the football, and if you can keep those safeties back, that's a lot of real estate to work with all over the field. So that's a big question I have for Florida State and for LSU in that football game. Now, College Game Day announced yesterday, and it was just a beautiful sight to see. It was like seeing an old friend, seeing a promo pop up on your Twitter sphere. I'm still calling it Twitter. I don't know what they're calling it now, but I'm not calling it whatever they want to call it. Seeing that alert that College Game Day has picked a location. They're headed to Charlotte. They're coming to your city. It's South Carolina. It's North Carolina. I don't care. It's a neutral site game. I just love that we got ball back. And the matchup I'm watching in this game, my big question, is the North Carolina secondary that has been revitalized through the portal now versus Spencer Rattler. Because last year, North Carolina, before they hit the portal and added some pieces, they allowed 270 yards a game through the air. Folks, that ain't good. That ain't not going to get it done against South Carolina. And South Carolina, to the same token, you saw Spencer Rattler be two different versions of himself from the first 3 quarters of the season to November. And so the question I have is, do we get November Spencer Rattler? And do we see an improved North Carolina secondary? Because as far as I'm concerned, North Carolina is walking into this game with a bit of a weak jaw. And it's on Spencer Rattler to deliver that knockout punch and land the perfect blow to be able to take advantage of that. Now, like I said, it's not the same cats that North Carolina had last year in the secondary. They've improved that, but schematically they got to be better regardless. Rattler had more interceptions than touchdowns before getting to November. So I think there's plays to be made, and if Rattler picks up where he left off last year, South Carolina could really get rolling here and could make this thing very, very interesting. When I say interesting, I mean it could be over by halftime if they're able to get the kind of success they had last year against Tennessee and the success they had against Clemson. Like, you hear what I'm saying. For North Carolina, though, if they can just hold it down on the back end, and I'm not saying they limit them to like less than 200 yards passing. I'm not saying they get 2-3 interceptions. I'm just saying, can you be serviceable in the secondary? Well, guess who you have trotting onto the field after you force a 3-and-out? You got Drizzy Drake May, who, for a lot of people's money, is the best quarterback in college football, not named Caleb Williams. So if you allow him to have his say on this game, all bets are off. But I'm excited for that one, man. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. Whole lot of fun to see which one of those teams comes out swinging and which team is able to put it together first. I'm curious to see, because remember, North Carolina, new offensive coordinator, South Carolina, new offensive coordinator. Very, very curious what version of these teams we get in week 1. Golly, I just love that we're talking about this. This is absolutely phenomenal. On Thursday of week 1, we got Florida and we got Utah. Florida going to Salt Lake City. And my question for that game when it pertains to Florida, the defensive depth. And defensive depth typically shows itself throughout the course of a season because you get beat up. It's a long season, especially in the SEC. You got grown men just absolutely beating the absolute snot out of each other. And for Florida last year, we saw that defensive line especially, like, that wore on them the duration of the season. There were times in the third and fourth quarter where Florida just wasn't able to have enough gas in the tank. Well, we're going to find out really early about this defensive depth that is supposedly improved because there's 2 things that Utah has that's going to expose that. And the first has nothing to do with the team that Utah is, but everything that the location is of Salt Lake City. They're at altitude. And when you're at altitude, for those of you that have experienced it, you understand the air, it just feels like there's not enough of it to go around. It's hard to catch your breath. It used to feel one way to run 10 yards, and now you run 10 yards and you feel like you're about to just go meet Jesus. Like, that's how it feels when you're at altitude and you're not prepared. So for Florida, they're going to have to rotate now, especially on the defensive line. That's going to be crucial. The other part of this, though, is Utah, they run the football really, really well. I mean, Jaquindon Jackson, I think he's still breaking tackles against USC right now. USC had like 150 missed tackles last year, and I think Jaquindon Jackson accounted for like a third of those. Just ridiculous running the football. They averaged 5.5 yards a carry last year on the ground. Good for number 7 in the country. So they're going to challenge you now if you're Florida. They're going to force you to show that you have a second unit that can come in there and not have a substantial drop-off from that first unit. If Florida can play strong in the trenches, they're going to have a game. They're going to have a game. They're going to be able to have a really good chance to repeat what they did last year in Gainesville. Now, on the other side of that, Cam Rising tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl. Dude looks straight out of Yellowstone. The question I have for him is, how healthy is he? Because if he's healthy, remember, Utah had a phenomenal year last year. They won the Pac-12, and they had a shot in the Rose Bowl. And like, they had a really strong season last year, in large part due to Cam Rising, but they didn't beat Florida last year. And one of the reasons why they didn't beat Florida was because of Cam Rising throwing an interception in the end zone. Utah was charging down the field, and I fully expected, watching from my couch, that Utah and Cam Rising were about to punch it in and walk it off in the swamp. And that didn't happen. And if you want to be real, probably a lot of the blame falls on Cam Rising. Now, he kept him in that game, to keep it a buck with you, but you understand what I'm saying. This game, I think, is a little bit personal to him. And so if he's able to be healthy, I would imagine we see a charged up, focused, locked in version of Cam Rising that we've come to expect from him throughout his career at Utah. However, if he's not able to go, if he's not able to be a version of himself that we've come to know of Cam Rising, well, then you throw in a backup quarterback into the mix. And honestly, the good people in Salt Lake City, I don't even think they know who their backup quarterback is going to be this coming season. You got Barnes, you got a couple of freshmen duking it out. Like, we'll see what happens. But any way you slice it, you're throwing in an inexperienced quarterback against an SEC defense. I know it's against Florida. I know it's at home. But even so, an SEC defense, a lot of physical freaks on that side of the ball for the Gators. Like, I would not like that situation if I'm a Utah fan. That could be the great equalizer for them. So we'll see what happens there, but those are my questions when it comes to that game. And one more, though. We got a little Monday night special. We got Clemson and we got Duke. Now, it's actually not a neutral site. They are going to Durham, North Carolina, to play the Blue Devils. And Duke was very, very quietly a really good team last year. I mean, the defense last year, I think they only gave up around 23 points a game. Now, they replaced a lot on that side of the ball, but even so, if Clemson doesn't go in there with their A game, we could very well see a situation where you're kind of tuning in and out of the game on Monday night. You got people over, you're grilling out, the game's kind of on in the background, and You go to halftime and you say, oh, what? It's 17-21. Clemson's only up by 4. Dare I say it's 14-10 and Duke's actually up with Riley Leonard playing quarterback. So a lot of the question marks for me in this game fall on what Cade Klubnik's going to be for Clemson. Because right now we only have 2 data points on him. This will be our third. The first data point where he absolutely went ballistic against North Carolina in the ACC title game. A lot of us were already calling our shot and putting in future bets for Cade Klubnik to win the Heisman in 2023. Like, call it what it was. And then you had the Orange Bowl against Tennessee with a secondary that caught a lot of flack throughout the duration of the season, statistically one of the worst in the country. He threw 2 picks, threw for a lot of yards, but dude just had a lot on his plate, was running for his life a lot of the night. We have 2 different sample sizes of Cade Klubnik and what he's going to be going forward. So it's still way too early to have a definitive statement on him, but in this game, I think we get a very good picture of what he's going to be in 2023. I'm not saying we define him by this game, but I think the more information we get a better picture for him, which is, I think, a fairly obvious statement. But Duke is going to be a good test. Like, the branding of Duke football, I think, gets a little bit disrespected because of how good the basketball is and what Coach K was there and all that. Like, it's a good football team now. It's a very good football team with a quarterback that very well could be in the first round next year. So Duke's going to give him problems if Cade Klubnik does not bring his A game. What does that third data point hold for the Tigers and for Cade Klubnik? I can't wait to see, but I just love that we're talking about week 1. It's a beautiful thing. Absolutely beautiful thing. Very glad to have y'all locked in. 30-some-odd days away. 30-some-odd days away now. I'm telling you, once College Game Day announces their location, that's one of the key things for me. Once they let us know where they're going, I'm like, okay, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We know it's about to be time for ball, and I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Appreciate everybody tuned in live here. Y'all know the drill. If everybody likes the video right now, a little thumbs up icon under the picture, we would reach our goal of 100 likes. I'm going to ask one more thing from y'all. Typically, we just ask y'all to like the video, and we thank you for that in advance. If you subscribe to the channel, we are charging towards 100,000 subscriptions to this very channel. We'd appreciate y'all immensely. And I'll say this too. We're workshopping some ideas to start giving away little Progrum t-shirts. You can't buy them anywhere. They're nowhere for sale. Strictly things that we are able to give away from this platform right here on my socials and you know, all that in a bag of chips. So once we get to 100,000 subscriptions on this channel, we will then start giving away these things. Now, there's going to be some sort of task to be able to earn a shirt, but I'm just telling you, if you want a Progrum shirt, get this channel to 100,000 subscribers, and it'll be on and popping. So thank you in advance for that. All right. As we get closer and closer to college football season, a lot of us are starting to form our opinions on what these teams are going to be in the 2023 season. And whenever there's opinions involved, there's usually a groupthink that goes on. Like, a lot of us sort of fall on the idea of, okay, Georgia's probably going to be really good. LSU's probably going to be really good. Michigan, yeah, I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the country. But there's also a group of teams that I would define as the most polarizing teams in the country. Meaning you have one group that thinks an extreme opinion about one team, and within that same team, you have an extreme opinion the opposite direction. So that kind of got me thinking, what are the most polarizing teams in college football heading into 2023? Well, I'm so glad you asked. I got 4 of them here for you, and the first of them is Texas A&M. And Texas A&M is a team that you either think it's fixed or you just think this thing is just a ticking time bomb with Bobby Petrino going to be the new OC. The 2 extreme opinions are the players are just not executing when it comes to last year's failures, missing a bowl game. Players aren't executing. Tons of talent. We all know that. Tons of talent, but the players themselves are not getting it done. It's on the players. That's one thought. Now, the larger thought, the louder thought, I should say, is that Jimbo Fisher's scheme is trash. It is hot dog water. It is no good. That's what a lot of people think. Now, those same people, if you were to ask them, well, what about his scheme do you think is so archaic and outdated and you think is so bad about it? They'd probably look at you for a little bit, probably grumble, and they'd probably move on to another conversation because they couldn't tell you from an X's and O's standpoint what is wrong with it. Well, I'm here to tell you the answer, I believe, with Texas A&M, as most extreme opinions go, it's probably somewhere dialed back a little bit from those extreme opinions. It's probably somewhere in the middle of those two. Like, there were definitely plays to be made last year. 100% true. At the exact same time, I don't think Texas A&M did enough to get their ball to playmakers frequently. That's all I'll say about that. But I think when you look at this roster, it's definitely there to do some really encouraging things if you're an A&M fan. Like there's a roster there that could win you 10 games. There's also a roster there with a lack of execution that could just as easily eke out 6 wins. It's going to come down to execution. It's going to come down to what Bobby Petrino ends up doing for them. But you have nobody that has a weak opinion on Texas A&M. There's already hot seat talk about Jimbo Fisher, which I think is just wild with the $70 million buyout. That would surprise me immensely. But even so, Texas A&M, one of the most polarizing teams in college football headed into 2023. No weak opinions on the Aggies of College Station. Really quickly, make sure you're subscribed. We're also on podcasts. So if you're watching this thing clipped a little bit later on, if you're not tuned in right now, you can find the full hour-long episode of this show on podcast. Apple and on Spotify. Type in the hard count with JD Piquel, and you will find us there. So thank you for that. All right, now Oklahoma is also one of the most polarizing teams in college football. And however you feel about Oklahoma, your stance is built on your perception of Brent Venables as a head coach. I don't think anyone can say Brent Venables is not a good defensive coordinator. He's got too much jewelry to say otherwise from what he did at Clemson. But you saw last year, and some people are saying, okay, 6 and 7 just showed us exactly who Brent Venables is going to be as a head coach. Hey, good coordinator, not cut out to be a head coach. Doesn't have the chops. That's what some people are going to say based on last year. Now, some people are going to take a step back and say it was his first year. I see what he did through the portal. Give him some time to really build his roster and build this defense the way he wants it, and maybe we have a different conversation. But the crowd that is most loudly against Brent Venables is living in the snapshots world. When I say that, I mean you remember the 49-0 loss against Texas in the Red River rivalry. You remember getting 55 points hung against them from TCU. That's what you remember if you're against Brent Venables. And I don't think that's incorrect, but I do think it's a little bit incomplete when you talk about Brent Venables going forward at Oklahoma. You have some people that think they're barely going to make a bowl game. You have other people picking them to win the Big 12. I mean, Oklahoma, according to the media at Big 12 Media Days, finished third. Finished third in the Big 12 Conference. So that means they were getting some first-place votes. The beautiful thing is they don't play the football season in July. They play it in the fall, which is why we love it. And we're going to get to see. But Oklahoma, again, another team that there are no weak opinions on, and a lot of them around Brent Venables and his acumen as a head coach. For me, though, I think Dylan Gabriel and the experience of that offense, if they can have some pieces on the outside separate, could be some good things. So we'll keep an eye on that, but that's Oklahoma for you. Now, this is arguably, I think, the most visible and most polarizing team in the entire country, and that's Alabama. Everything about Alabama and what makes them polarizing is the question marks and how you think Nick Saban is going to answer them. You got a new quarterback. And it's not just like you're throwing in the next quarterback that you saw from, some really solid things in the spring and, you feel good about who he's going to be. It's a battle, and you had the spring game and nobody separated, and they went out and got a backup quarterback from Notre Dame. So some people are saying, what in the world is going on in that quarterback room? How in the heck is Nick Saban going to get Bama back to their standard without a quarterback? You also see that they're 125th in the country when it comes to returning production. There's only 133 teams, y'all. All right, so basically they have next to nobody coming back that contributed last year. Same question. Okay, well, how are they going to do it? How is Nick Saban going to answer this? And Paul Feinbaum said this when we jumped on his show, and I thought it's probably the most concise way to say this point for Nick Saban and why he is getting doubt heading into 2023. If you couldn't get it done with Bryce Young at quarterback and with Will Anderson off the edge, number 1 overall pick in the draft and another first-round draft pick on defense, how in the heck are you going to do it with a question mark at quarterback, 2 new coordinators? Like, how is this going to work? Now, there's another group of people that say, listen, and I fall in this camp, and you all have heard me say it a few times, I want to bet against Nick Saban. I want to do it. I've seen this too many times where everyone says Saban's done, Bama's done, dynasty's over, good run for them, and then would you know it, he pops back up, wins a national title. For Saban and for Alabama, there is a little bit of Bama fatigue around them, which is why people, I think, are a little bit trigger happy when it comes to calling Bama being down for the count. Now, I'm not saying that I have complete confidence in Bama going forward and they're going to be a national title contender and all that. I'm just saying I think all the question marks around Bama are fair and they're unavoidable, but you also have to do some deeper research and see how well they've recruited, how their approach is going to be this coming season. It's not going to be a quarterback-driven offense. So you can tell which side of the fence I fall when it comes to Bama and how polarizing they are. But regardless, the beautiful thing about it, we get to see. Some people are saying Bama's going to win 9 games and lose 3, and we'll just write off Nick Saban for good then. And some people, Kirk Herbstreit being one of them, came on this very show and said if he had to pick at this point in time, which I believe this was June, or maybe it was May, in the spring, he's like, I might take Bama right now if I had to pick a national title winner. So that's Bama for you. When it comes to Nick Saban, a lot of people want to say that he's done. This is not the first time. The beautiful thing is we get to see. Now, the last team we got to talk about here, the Iowa Hawkeyes. And for Iowa, you either think the machine is just broken, done, pack it up, or you think that the new parts that have been added to this machine are going to get it rolling again. If I told you at the beginning of last season, so let's rewind the tape, we're a couple weeks away from college football and the 22 season starting, it's going to be amazing. I told you, hey, we're going to finish the year and Iowa will be allowing 14 points a game. Top 3 in the country. What would you guess their record's going to be? I think a lot of people would say, well, they at least made it to Indy. They at least had a shot to win the Big Ten title. Did they do it? I don't know, but they probably had a pretty good shot and probably made a pretty nice bowl game. Well, the thing that I wouldn't be telling you at that point in time is that they only scored 18 points a game offensively. 18 points a game, and they still have the same OC with Brian Ferentz. So the question is, how much does Cade McNamara and Eric All and the rest of that portal class impact what they do offensively? Because the defense, I would expect to still be really good. Yeah, you lost some pieces to the NFL draft. I think Iowa has been the same team for a long time defensively. I don't expect that to change. They're going to be really good defensively. Does the revamping of that offense from a personnel standpoint change the game? I don't know. That's why they play the games. But a lot of people think Iowa's just an offense away, and they wouldn't be wrong. But to put all your chips on Cade McNamara, I would be a little bit more slow to do. Because I like Cade McNamara. I think he's a good player. Is he dynamic? Is he a game changer for you? That was one of the reasons why he wasn't the guy at Michigan. They liked what J.J. McCarthy brought from an arm talent standpoint. They liked what he did with his legs. Cade McNamara, really good game manager. Is he going to just totally revitalize the Iowa offense with the same scheme? I need some convincing. But we're going to get to see it in the fall. So I'll get to be convinced when that point in time comes, or we'll get to be proven right. But regardless, these are the most polarizing teams in college football. You got A&M. You either think it's fixed, or you think Bobby Petrino and Jimbo Fisher are just going to go up in flames with that team and they'll barely make a bowl game. Or maybe if you're on the really negative side of things, they'll win 5 games again. I probably wouldn't go that far, but you hear what I'm saying. The roster's there to do some good things. Oklahoma, it's all about what you think about Brent Venables. Are you buying stock? You think he's going to get better as a head coach? Or are you sticking in the camp that, hey, 6-7 last year, that's what he is? I think more data is going to benefit all of us, but you're entitled to your opinion, as am I. Now, when it comes to Bama, a lot of question marks in Tuscaloosa. A lot of question marks and a lot of people saying things about Nick Saban. We're going to get to see. We're going to get to see how he answers those. And then for Iowa, defense is great. Defense has been great for a while here, but the offense, is Cade McNamara the answer? We get to find out. That's the beautiful part about this game. All right, appreciate everybody tuned in live. Now we got a lot to unpack. Now, here's the thing that if you're new here, here's one of the best things that we do on this channel. At the end of this show, we go to the live chat. We bring in one of the best producers, the best producer in the game, Nick Brake, and we answer y'all's questions. So get in your thoughts, concerns, feelings. Get them into the live chat right now. Excited to get to those here in just a few short moments. Also, if we could like this video, that'd be phenomenal. Get us over 100. Thank you in advance for that. Now, college football season is very close, so with that being said, that means that the recruiting piece is going to heat up just a little bit, and I want to settle in on Georgia right now, because Georgia last night landed the #1 linebacker in America out of Texas. His name is Justin Williams. He is a dude. He actually committed on this very platform. Another reason to subscribe and push us to 100,000. But you hear what I'm saying? Georgia just got the number 1 linebacker in the country. And the peculiar thing about it is they currently have the number 3 linebacker in the country, DeMarcus Riddick, committed. Also a 5-star, dude's a baller, been committed for a while, but he's set to make a, quote, final decision on Wednesday, picking between Georgia, Bama, Auburn. Now, he very well could pick Georgia again. That could absolutely happen. I have no knowledge of what he's going to do. But it just feels a little bit like if you're going to make a final decision, but you're committed somewhere, you typically don't just commit to that school again, announcement style. You know what I'm saying? So he's picking between Georgia, Bama, Auburn. He's from the state of Alabama. We'll see where he goes. But I don't think it's irresponsible to assume that DeMarcus Riddick could very well end up committing somewhere else. I don't think it's irresponsible to assume. So what does that mean for Georgia? And I think the reaction from Georgia fans, or maybe just the overall buzz that this recruitment has gotten, is really fascinating. Georgia is in a position right now where they just get landed the number 1 linebacker in the country, and they may lose the number 3 linebacker in the country, and I don't think anybody is going to bat an eye. And when I say that, I'm not saying that you're ever happy to lose the number 3 linebacker in the country into DeMarcus Riddick. Far, far from that. Stud ball player. You want him on your team. Your team is better with him on it. No way around it. But Georgia right now is in a position where the brand, y'all hear me say it a lot, the brand recruits itself. Georgia took 3 linebackers in 2023. They're at a place where they have so much depth to where losing one player, never ideal on the recruiting trail, but it doesn't drastically impact their standing on the roster. I'll put it to you this way. If you were to take $10,000 out of my bank account, I would be hurting. I would be hurting. I'd be in the negative, all right? It'd be a bad deal. It'd be a very, very bad deal. I'd be in a negative way. However, if you took $10,000 out of Jeff Bezos' bank account, I don't think he would notice. Yeah, well, maybe he would because he's probably financially savvy. He'd probably be like, hey, that's never great. I don't like that. But at the same time, it wouldn't shake him up too much. And so what I'm saying is for Georgia, you never want to lose DeMarcus Riddick, but they're at a place now where they've built so much depth and they have so much development in place there to where they're not going to be overly, they're not going to have a big emotional response, I don't think, from this fan base because of how well they've recruited. And that says something about Kirby Smart and the way he's built Georgia up, because it wasn't always like that at Georgia now. It hasn't always been that way in Athens. And the way they've developed their personnel and the way they have recruited on defense speaks volumes to where he has that team at right now. So for Georgia, again, we'll see what DeMarcus Riddick does. If DeMarcus Riddick picks Georgia on Wednesday, moot point. But I just think it is fascinating, the response that this whole decision and this whole situation is not really getting right now from Georgia fans because of how much they have stacked it on the recruiting trail. So for Georgia, we'll see what happens. But it's a place right now where losing a 5-star recruit doesn't necessarily overwhelm the fan base, which I think is rather rare. Took $10,000 from me, we're in trouble. You take $10,000 from Jeff Bezos, take a 5-star recruit from Georgia, never ideal, but it doesn't hurt them nearly as much as it would somebody else, which in itself is fascinating. Now, staying in recruiting talk, what are some of the most high-impact recruits in the country? And when I say impact, I'm not talking just about the way it impacts their class ranking and what it means for them on signing day. I'm talking about for this team as it relates to the program itself, when it comes to the actual standing for them when they landed up 11 on 11. What does it mean for these schools, and who are the most high-impact recruits? About to talk about it in a second. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you like the video. All we're going to ask. One more thing, actually. Go find us on podcast. Subscribe and leave a 5-star review there. Thank you in advance for that. All right, here we go. The impact recruits for the 2024 cycle. I think one of the highest profile guys we got to talk about is industry 5-star quarterback DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway is committed to Florida, and he's been a phenomenal recruiter. I mean, Josh Newberg of the Inside Scoop, who also puts out bangers on this channel, so make sure you're subscribed here, talks about him as the best player recruiter in the country. And I'm not talking about recruiting players. I'm talking about recruit that is a player that recruits other players. Like, he is consistently texting these guys. We had Jeremiah Smith on the show for the On3 NIL Elite Series event, and he was saying he was one of the hardest recruiters of him, and he's currently committed to Ohio State. So that tells you about DJ Lagway. The reason why he's such a high impact guy in my mind is he likely, for better or worse, is going to be how you define Billy Napier in Gainesville. Because last year you had AR, and he's a dude, right? First round draft pick, was pretty inconsistent. I mean, if he didn't bring it that day, you didn't know what was going to happen for Florida. You bring in Graham Mertz, transfer portal quarterback. You're just kind of trying to bridge the gap to get Florida to be able to eventually have the personnel that Billy Napier's recruiting. But when it comes to DJ Lagway, when he steps foot on campus, I believe two things. One, I think he'll compete early. Just my feel for things. Second, if and when he does start, that is how you will define Billy Napier's success. Because Billy Napier played quarterback in college, offensive mind. Like, once he has his guy, that's going to be when we start to assess, okay, well, you have your pieces now, you have your quarterback. What are you as the head coach at Florida? Whether it's fair or not, I think that's what's going to happen. So if DJ Lagway goes out and just balls, if he just hits the ground running and lives up to that five-star billing first day on campus in Gainesville, I think Billy Napier is going to be in good position. So not to put too much pressure on DJ Lagway, but I think a lot of Billy Napier's time in Florida will be defined by how successful he is. By definition, a high-impact recruit. Now, let's shift the focus here to a uncommitted individual, and that is edge, five-star edge, Colin Simmons. Colin Simmons out of Texas, plays at Duncanville High School. He is, from when he sat down at the On3 NIL Elite Series event, he told us his leaders are LSU and Texas. Those are perceived to be the front runners for Colin Simmons. And the impact for both of these schools is enormous. For Texas, they have been begging for a pass rusher here, somebody to get after the quarterback. And Colin Simmons had 22 and a half sacks as a junior. Dude can play a little bit. He's a game wrecker. We've seen him do that at the high school level. You imagine he's going to have success doing that at the collegiate ranks. Based on what we've seen from him, Charles Power, director of scouting and rankings here for us at On3, comps him to Von Miller. You don't throw around the comp of Von Miller unless the dude can play. All right, so Colin Simmons, should he stay in state and be a Longhorn, that will be enormous for them as they go to the SEC. Because in the SEC, having good defensive line play is the price of admission. And that brings me to the next team we got to talk about here with LSU. There's a similar thought for them. And the thought is similar in the sense that you want to add a elite pass rusher, because Colin Simmons is that. But when we've seen great LSU teams historically, the teams that play for national titles and for SEC titles, those teams more often than not have freakish defensive lines in Baton Rouge. So if Brian Kelly were to land Colin Simmons and go grab him out of the state of Texas from the Longhorns, that would be his second five-star edge that he's recruited since being in Baton Rouge. So, yes, you have pieces there, but even more importantly, you have depth. You ensure greater percentage chances of you being able to get after the quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. And that's the kind of brand of LSU football that they want to play. They want to be that bully on the block. They want to be that team that you have to always worry about double teaming their edge, and you can't double team both their edges. Like, you hear what I'm saying? Colin Simmons would be a tremendous step in the right direction for LSU in doing that. So he's a high-impact guy, whether he goes to Texas or whether he goes out of state and goes to LSU. But I am so excited to watch his recruitment because dude is an absolute baller. Great kid, too. Sat down with him at the On3 NIL Elite Series event and was so well-spoken. You could tell loves football. And, I'm excited to see what he does at the next level. Kid's a dude. He's only in high school. So the next guy we got to talk about here, he is currently committed to Ohio State, and that is wide receiver Jeremiah Smith. Now, I'm not here to break down his recruitment because there's a lot about, Florida being after him, Florida State being after him. Right now, kid's committed to Ohio State, well within his right to take other visits, so we're not going to, delve too deeply into his recruitment. But the impact that he brings to the table, specifically for Ohio State, can be distilled in two categories. First category, game breaker at wide receiver. That's not new for Ohio State. They've typically had game breakers in every single class. You had Garrett Wilson, you had Olave, you had Jack Smith and Jigba. They've typically had game breakers year in and year out at Ohio State. Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, and that's important for Ohio State, really 2 to 3 games a year. And I don't say that to dunk on the Big Ten, but I think it's more so a testament to how well Ohio State recruits. Each and every year, you feel pretty confident they're going to have one of the best, if not the best roster in the Big Ten. So when it comes to those games where the roster may be awash, that game against Michigan, the games against Georgia, the games against Alabama, theoretically, whoever you end up playing in the college football playoff or the bowl game. In those kind of games, when the rosters are relatively even, you need someone to win your matchup on the outside. I go back to the college football playoff game against Georgia for Ohio State. Marvin Harrison Jr., he was the game breaker. He was the best player on the field that day. Period. The end. He was going to win Ohio State that football game. I truly believe that. You'll find a lot of people in Athens that disagree with me. But Marvin Harrison Jr., you want to ask what he did against Georgia? He did whatever he wanted against Georgia, to be real. Got knocked out of the game, but that matchup on the outside, Ohio State probably didn't have the matchup in the trenches. They probably didn't have the matchup when it came to being able to run the football and stop the run. But on the outside, when they got one-on-one coverage, C.J. Stroud got the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr., and that was the way they were going to win the football game. That was the game plan. Now, I'm not comping Jeremiah Smith to Marvin Harrison Jr., but I'm saying he is an elite talent, number one player in the country, according to the On3 industry rankings. Dude can play some ball now. And so being able to have that matchup in those kind of games cannot be overstated, the impact that could have for the Buckeyes. That's the first part of things, the game breaker. Second part of things, the other category we got to talk about is the versatility. And I told this story yesterday in a one-off video on the On3 YouTube channel. Wasn't in a live show, so I want to retell it right now. I texted Charles Power after reading the scouting report on Jeremiah Smith and his size and his versatility and how fluid he is and his speed. I mean, he's 6'3", 200 pounds, and he can move. And I texted Charles Power, director of scouting and rankings, and I asked him, could you see him lining up places outside of the wide receiver position? When I say outside of the wide receiver position, I mean outside of like a true outside receiver, like the X position or the Z position. Charles Power very directly said, I could see him lining up anywhere. Meaning you have a 6'3", 200-pound human being that could move, that could play in the slot. And so when Ohio State can move around a guy like Jeremiah Smith like a chess piece and have him on the outside, have him on the inside, that means you get to pick your matchup. And when you get to pick your matchup as an offense with who you want to isolate and get the football to and who you want guarding Jeremiah Smith, you have a better opportunity to score points, to get the football to him and to win his matchup. And when you have better opportunity to score points, you have a higher likelihood you're going to win the football game. We're oversimplifying here, but you get the gist of things. Jeremiah Smith, from a playmaker standpoint, from a versatility standpoint, the impact he could have on the Ohio State offense, it wouldn't be drastically new, but it would be enormously important. Jeremiah Smith, again, dude can absolutely ball. Now, the last two recruits I want to talk about here sort of in tandem, and they make up the future of the Georgia quarterback room. That is Ryan Puglisi and Dylan Raiola. Ryan Puglisi committed first. We think he's a top 10 quarterback in the country out of Connecticut. And Dylan Raiola, who will be playing his high school football this fall, actually, at Buford in Georgia. Number one quarterback in America. I mean, I don't know what you want me to say about him. Dude can ball. Number one quarterback in America for a reason. And to Ryan Puglisi's credit, there were a lot of people, both in the college football world, that came after him to try and get him to flip, and fans on the outside looking in that thought that he maybe would look elsewhere to play his college football once Dylan Raiola committed. And Ryan Puglisi knew that. He 100% knew that. And he has been extremely solid in his commitment. He has been crystal clear he wants to be a Georgia Bulldog. He will be a Georgia Bulldog. And for Georgia, I mean, that is just an embarrassment of riches in the quarterback room. And the reason why this is so important for Georgia, why it's such a high impact position to have not one but both of these guys in the quarterback room in the future, is for Georgia, when you call the offense as an OC, you are in most ways at the mercy of what your quarterback can do, right? I'm not dialing up deep out to the field because that's a really hard throw to make if my quarterback is limited arm strength-wise. Just the way it's going to go. I'm not dialing up play action to hit a deep shot over the top if we're inconsistent and can't hit the deep throw. And so for Georgia, having both these dudes who are going to push each other and get the best out of each other, a lot of people who also think Ryan Puglisi could be the guy out of these two. If you're the OC, if you're Mike Bobo, you go from what can we call offensively? What are we able to call offensively? From, hey, what do we want to call offensively? Both these cats can sling it. Both these dudes are some of the best in the country at their craft. May the best man win. Whoever starts for us, let's ride. We got the whole playbook open to us. We can also continue to evolve the playbook. Georgia's going to be smash mouth. I think they're going to continue to be the bully on the block, run the football, 2 tight ends. We're coming after you. Let's get after it. Like, I think that's how they're still going to live. But to be able to have the balance and to be able to stretch the field vertically, to have a quarterback that can hit the deep shot. We saw the maturation of Stetson Bennett last year. How different was last year's Georgia team than the 2021 Georgia team? 2021, to be real, Stetson Bennett did a lot for that team, but that defense carried them. Defense was generational. So a lot of people going into 2022 were like, a lot of draft picks gone from that defense. Can Stetson Bennett do it? I was guilty of that personally. That was one of my question marks I had for Georgia coming into the year. But we saw Stetson Bennett up his game to a new level, was a Heisman finalist. Georgia scored over 40 a game. And Georgia won a national title for the second year in a row because of what they could do offensively, because of their balance. Having Ryan Puglisi and Dylan Raiola ensures that you will be able to have balance as much as you want it calling the offense for Georgia. So all of these kids, man, I'm telling you, going to make a high impact at their future school. DJ Lagway's headed to Florida. I think you define the Billy Napier era, in my humble opinion, by what he's able to do for you. It's not all on him, but I think a lot of it does ride with the quarterback, and I'm sure DJ Lagway welcomes that pressure. Colin Simmons, is it Texas? Is it LSU? I don't know, but either way, one of those teams is going to get a game wrecker. Got to have a game wrecker in the SEC coming off the edge for you. Jeremiah Smith, game breaker, versatile, lining up wherever you want. Good luck guarding him. Going to be a game breaker, especially in those games where Ohio State is more evenly matched from a roster talent perspective. We just talked about it. The future of the Georgia quarterback room is in good hands with Ryan Puglisi and Dylan Raiola. That offense, I think, will continue to evolve and be in good position for years to come. That's one of the things about recruiting, man. It never stops. I know there's dead periods. I know there's times where kids aren't taking visits, but there's always something to talk about when it comes to the way a certain kid's trending or the impact they could have when it comes to Saturday afternoons when they get there. Make sure you subscribe because Josh Newberg of the Inside Scoop just bodies it every single time. Also, more commitments to come on the On3 YouTube channel. KJ Bolden going to make his decision right here. So make sure you're locked in for that. Would encourage you to subscribe. Just don't miss that. I'm telling you, do not miss that if you're a college football fan. Let's go ahead and get 12 more likes, get over 100. That would be phenomenal. I'm not even worried about it because I trust the program. I trust our people, and y'all get it done in an elite fashion. So thank you for that. Also, getting your questions to Nick Bray because we're about to answer those here in just a few short minutes. Before we do that, though, pulse the program. I asked y'all on Twitter, who do you want us to cover next? What's the next program you want to get a pulse of? And we got tons of great answers. But one that kept popping up was the Cornhuskers of Nebraska. You know the deal with them. So close so many times. It was like Rod Wave. Heart been broke so many times, I don't know what to believe, is how Nebraska fans have felt previously. And it's fair. You've lost double-digit games by one score. That hurts. Finally, last year you say enough is enough. Scott Frost, we love you. We can't keep doing this anymore. This is not good for our health. So you go throughout the duration of the season, and you end up hiring none other than Matt Rhule. Now, it didn't work out in the NFL. That's fine. Ask Nick Saban, you don't have to have NFL success to be a good college football coach. Different sports, different way of operating. And so for Nebraska, a lot of excitement right now. A lot of excitement around what they could be. And so to reset the approach for us here with Pulse of the Program, a couple things we always got to mention. One, Program is not a typo. It's what we call these football teams. The teams that focus on the internal, focus on doing it the process way and building it from the ground up. Those are programs, all right? Not programs, those are programs. So the U is not a typo. Very, very clearly, because I know we'll get that somewhere in the comment section. So just guarding against that really quick. Also, the Pulse of the Program series is meant to take a pulse of the fan base and, as best we can tell, the pulse of the internal operation at Nebraska within that building. So the pulse of the program, the pulse of that fan base, rather, at Nebraska is rebranding. And when I say rebranding, I'm not talking about rebuilding. I'm not talking about revamping. I'm talking about rebranding. And rebranding is typically a way of shifting your focus and shifting your perspective on a certain topic. In Twitter's case, they're shifting from Twitter to, I don't know what they're shifting to. But you hear what I'm saying. Rebranding is a change of how you look at things. And for Nebraska, the fan base, it is an entire expectation shift from what they come to expect from Scott Frost to what they will expect of Matt Rhule. Because Scott Frost, when he came to Nebraska, it was, okay, we're going to be more spread out. We're going to go quickly. We're going to run a new style of offense. We're going to be flashy. And now with Matt Rhule, the approach is we're going to be physical. We're going to be blue collar. We're going to be gritty. We're going to play in the trenches. We're not going to beat ourselves. We're not. We're not going to be a team that just shoots ourselves in the foot by having dumb special teams errors. That's not going to be who we are under Matt Rhule because of what we know of him from his track record, both at Temple and at Baylor, and the way that Matt Rhule wants to operate his football team is exactly what this fan base, I think, is starving for. He came on this very show and told us himself, I think me and the fan base are aligned in what we expect from this team from a style standpoint. They're going to line up with the fullback. They're going to have a tight end, if not multiple tight ends on the field. They're going to play smash mouth. They're going to make you earn it if you're on the defense. They're going to take 3 yards in the cloud at us and play football physically. And so for Matt Rhule and for this team, I think the internal feel, we say it all the time, but there's an overlap there. The rebrand for them is the rebrand in how they view themselves at Nebraska. Because I'll say this, I've been a part of some losing teams, and the external chatter after a while starts to seep into that locker room, and you start to question yourself. You start to say, well, maybe we are a 4-8 football team. Maybe they're right. Maybe we are a team that just kind of gets close and we got some good pieces, but we're never going to get over the hump. And that's poison, and that's a mindset thing, and it's something that Matt Rhule right now is trying to drive out of that locker room and trying to drive out of that team, I would imagine. I think the rebrand is, hey, there's a sense of pride here. You are the team in Nebraska. I mean, I can speak just from the YouTube numbers. The way that Nebraska faithful root for their Cornhuskers, the sellout, the way that they just devour Nebraska football year-round, it's a beautiful thing. It's a special thing, and it is something that I think this team now probably took pride in previously, but I think Matt Rhule is really making it a case like, hey, there is a pride thing when you wear that N on the side of your helmet. You don't listen to the outside chatter. You don't listen to all those people saying what Nebraska football was. We're here now. We're rebranding. It's a new era at Nebraska football. It's a new era. It's a new brand of football. They don't beat themselves. Old school used to do it. I say old school. Old regime used to do it. We don't do that here. And I can say from playing for Matt Rhule for a short period of time, that is one of the key things for him is the process. I'm not worried about results. I'm not worried about Saturday because guess what? We got a Tuesday practice to attack. Saturday we'll get here, but we better win Tuesday first. How do you win Tuesday? Showing up on time. Showing up for lunch on time. Eating the right things at lunch. Having your uniform the right way. Not wearing hats in the building. Things like that. Those are things that he implemented at Baylor that I would imagine he still has implemented at Nebraska. And it sounds small. It sounds dumb to people on the outside looking in, but I'm telling you, when you have attention to detail to every little thing you do, that adds up over time. If I can trust you to wear the right thing to practice on Tuesday, I can probably trust you to block the right guy on 4th and 1 to beat Iowa. Right? Like those things add up over time, and that is the rebrand right now that's going on at Nebraska. So in part with this rebrand, I want to make sure that we say this. Nebraska is not rebuilding. They went to the portal, added 14 individuals that are going to help them this coming season. They did not overhaul the roster. Yes, they lost some guys to the portal as well, but this is not just a total knock the whole thing down, build it back up. You won one game last year. No. It's nauseating to talk about if you're a Nebraska fan, but even so, you've been close multiple times, and close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, but the same thing is true for Nebraska. They're not that far off to being a bowl-eligible football team, right? And so when you look at the history for Matt Rhule, he's rebuilt some places. Rebuilt Temple, we've said it a lot on this show. Rebuilt Baylor when a lot of places were saying they should get the death penalty, like, those were different operations than what he's walking into at Nebraska. Nebraska has some talent on the roster, utilized the portal, something that didn't exist the same way it does now when Matt Rhule was in college at Baylor. It existed, but you hear what I'm saying. There were some different rules that were in place that limited how you could use it. They got some pieces now. And so I don't think it'll be a 3-year rebuild like what we've seen historically from Matt Rhule. I think it'll be a little bit closer to 2. Now, what does a rebuild amount to in your mind, or a rebrand amount to? I think that's probably up to us to talk about as we get further and further into this thing. But I think they're a bowl-eligible team this year, and I think they are a team that can build off of that in the coming seasons. I don't think it's a thing where you got to knock it all down and slowly but surely scratch and claw and find your way back to being competitive. I think they'll be competitive this year. I think they'll be more competitive, though, in years to come under Matt Rhule. So the pulse for Nebraska, internally and within that building, it is a rebrand. It is a new era of Cornhusker football, and I can't wait to see it. Now, the tough thing for Nebraska here is, as a lot of y'all know that are tuned in right now, the Big Ten is adding USC and UCLA. To make matters even more difficult, they are doing away with divisions. So it used to be, hey, the Big Ten West, if you can just find a way to be sneaky enough and get to Indianapolis, you have a shot at this thing. Like, no. It is going to be an all-out brawl for the entire length of the season. And we may very well get Michigan, Ohio State 2 weeks in a row for the Big Ten title when that time comes. So I'm excited to watch it, but yeah, that's going to be an absolute wild reality when 2024 hits us and we get the new college football. But I appreciate everybody tuned in live right now. Make sure you like the video. Man, over 100. Never had a doubt. Was never worried for a second. Thank you so much for being locked in. We talk ball every day, and I appreciate y'all responding accordingly. Now, I took to my Twitter page and I asked y'all, what are some signs as a college football fan that let you know that the season is about to start? And I'm not talking about the calendar. I'm not talking about you saying, okay, so it's 30 some odd days away. I'm saying just internally, if we threw the calendar out the window, how would you know college football is about to start? We got a lot of great answers from y'all. I want to touch on a few of them. One of the big ones we got from y'all was College Game Day announcing that they are going somewhere for week 1. Like, that's a beautiful thing. They announced yesterday they're going to Charlotte for North Carolina, South Carolina. You got coming to your city, playing over the background, and it shows the different, highlights of where they're going with the city and with the teams. Like, it's just a beautiful thing. To me, that's like, okay, the light at the end of the tunnel. I can look forward to College Game Day being somewhere when I wake up on Saturday morning for week 1. It's a beautiful thing. Like seeing an old friend. When Lee Corso's back on my television, I know that things are going to be okay. I know things are going to be okay when we get College Game Day back on the air, and them announcing their location tells me we're close. Tells me we're very close. Now, this is one that I think just, if you're a college football fan, you get it. And if you're tuning into this show, you're listening on podcasts, or you're watching right now, you get it because you are a college football fan. You're a diehard being locked in with us. So thank you for that. But one thing that y'all said repeatedly was sort of twofold. One was the weather. Like, hey, man, when it gets hot, when it's over 100 degrees, I know we are close to college football season. I know it's about that time. And that's true. The other part of that, though, that y'all said was you just kind of feel something in the air, which sounds kind of ridiculous to people on the outside looking in. If you're like a hockey fan or if you're a fan of Major League Baseball, like, that's fine. I don't fault you for that. You can be fans of those things, but you understand there's a certain buzz in the air, a certain feel in the air, maybe a little bit more humid for certain parts of the country. For our friends in the Northeast, maybe it starts to get a little bit more crisp. You can tell, okay, there's about to be a fall upon us here. It's kind of a romantic thing that just college football fans will get. And if you're watching this video, you're locked in, you are a college football fan, so you get it. But that was something that was like, man, we really got to circle and underline that one, because that's one that it's hard to explain and put into words, but it's one of those things like if you get it, you get it. And we appreciate y'all getting it. Now, here's an important one, fall plans. You start looking at the calendar that we threw out the window, you actually go and get it out of the trash and you say, okay, well, we got a wedding in September. We got this on a weekend in October. We got this in November. And you start planning accordingly for what those situations will require of you and how you can find a way to not have those same things required of you so you can watch ball on those Saturdays. Because real friends, they'll tell you now, they're not going to schedule something on a Saturday in the fall. Just the way it is, just what good people do. But here's how I would advise you to be able to find a way out of those situations. I would stay really vague. If you can say for work, you can say, hey, I got work. God bless you. It's hilarious we get to say that we have work on a fall Saturday, so we're grateful to do that. But if you're not in that situation, keep on fighting the good fight. I would stay vague. I would say, I got an event. I would say, I have an obligation. I would say, I've had something on the books for a while now. Because you have. I mean, heck, Georgia's schedule came out a while ago. Nebraska's schedule came out a while ago. You've had something on the books here for a little bit, for whatever your favorite college football team is. You've had something on the books. It's not a lie saying, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm busy that day. I had something on the calendar long in advance. Try that one on for size. But kind of moving around our fall schedule, our fall calendar for November and October, that's how you know it's about to be college football season. Here's one of the best ones we got, Shark Week. This doesn't get enough buzz, But whenever you see Shark Week on the television, you're probably, during those commercial breaks, depending on your provider, you may see a commercial for college football coming back on ESPN or on Fox or whatever it ends up being. So what I'm trying to say is when we see Shark Week on the TV, that means we're close. There's blood in the water, pun intended. One of y'all said ESPN puts out a home run counter, which was just too funny to not mention on the air. Last year, we all remember the Aaron Judge chase for whatever home run he was going after popping up during different games that we were watching. And it's third down and, split screen. So you're watching your team go for it on third down and try to pick up a crucial first down in the fourth quarter to be able to win the football game. And then on the other side of the screen, you're seeing Aaron Judge get walked again. So that was just too good to not mention. But all that's to say, that's a short but not exhaustive list. We also got a lot of people saying when school starts back up again, have a large college audience. Salute to y'all that are tuned in watching the show and going back to school here very soon. We're fighting the good fight with you. A lot of teachers that watch the show that said when they start getting their lesson plans together and they start getting ready for school, that's how they know it's about time for ball. Hey, it's a necessary evil. I understand. But regardless, we're going to attack it together. The college football season is almost upon us, and I can't wait to get after it with y'all. It's going to be a really, really good year. It's going to be a really, really good year. Now, to break it down together, I want to hear from y'all right now. Slowly but surely, y'all been building the queue, getting in your thoughts, your concerns, your questions. And so to break it all down, we got to bring in Mr. 720 himself, Legatron, feared across kickball leagues all across the Nashville metro area. Nick Brake. Nick, how we doing, man?
Dude, I'm not 720 anymore now. I'm 698.
Okay. Well, I mean, how many games are left?
I've got 2 more games and we got some playoffs.
Okay, so I mean, hey, that batting average could be substantially higher when it's all said and done, is what you're telling me.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It should be. I'm hitting a stride. JD, speaking of hitting a stride, man, got a lot of people getting in chats, getting in questions.
Nice.
I'm gonna start with David Erickson. #AskJD, who wins the Big Ten first, Nebraska or USC, UCLA?
Nebraska or USC, UCLA. So they may not like this answer because I'm guessing this is a Nebraska fan based on the show that we had lined up for today. I think USC wins the Big Ten first of that group. I think they've recruited really well. You got Malachi Nelson sitting back there. I love Matt Rhule. I love what Nebraska's building. I like UCLA. I like Chip Kelly. I like what they have with Dante Moore. I think they have a good chance to maybe make some noise in the Pac-12 this year. But with the talent they have at USC and the way that I expect them to recruit, if they can just get it together defensively, I know Caleb Williams will be gone, but having Malachi Nelson, the 5-star quarterback, sitting in the wings there and running the Lincoln Riley offense, there may be an acclimation period, but I do believe if I had to pick today, I would probably put my money on USC to win the Big Ten first, Nick, just the way I feel about that one.
Well, JD, you were saying you thought that maybe David Erickson had a little bit of a Nebraska lean there. In fact, he does.
That's okay.
His follow-up question was, who is the true sole winner of the 1997 championship with the little corn emoji. So I think that answers that question.
I think we know how they lean there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David. Next up, Cotton, #AskJD. What programs will have 2 different 1,000-yard rushers and or 1,000-yard receivers in 2023? Good question.
2 different 1,000-yard rushers. So I'll say this. I think it's a pretty short list. I think you could look at, I think Michigan's probably the obvious one you look at and say maybe it's Michigan. I think Penn State could be on that list with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Here's a dark horse for you, Nick. I think Florida could be on that list. Now, the SEC is going to be brutal, but Trevor Etienne and Montreal Johnson, they both ran for over 700 yards last year, I believe, so that could be a piece there. But, I mean, getting over 1,000 yards is just so tricky. I would also say I think it's tricky because if you're running for over 1,000 yards a game, well, then how many are you throwing for? And if you're having to run a whole heck of a lot, you're probably not super balanced. And if you're not balanced, it's hard to win football games. So I don't know that we'll see a team that has 2,000-yard rushers, Nick. I think if I had to pick, I would say Michigan and Penn State, maybe Florida, maybe throw Ohio State in there. I'd be surprised if we saw any with 1,000-yard rushers. Now, 1,000-yard receivers, Ohio State could be one of those teams with Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, I think you could see maybe a team like, mean, I guess USC with how much they're going to throw the football with Caleb Williams. You could see Tennessee actually with Joe Milton and him airing it out, and Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton and Squirrel White. So there's a lot of teams that I could throw in the mix there. I just think it's so difficult to have two individuals have 1,000 yards of anything. Like that it means that they're getting the lion's share of the carries or the receptions. So it has to be so unevenly distributed for that to happen. And the teams that have the talent for that to happen are well coached. So I don't think you would see that come to reality. So a roundabout way to say a lot of teams could do it. I say a lot. There is several teams that could do it. I would be surprised if we saw that happen, Nick. Is that a roundabout answer for you? I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
That'd be a wild stat line. Thomas asked, everyone here talks about Joe Milton and the Tennessee passing game, but what do you think about Tennessee's run game and the running backs? Joe Milton will play a big part if healthy.
Hey, that is the play for Tennessee. Like, so much is built for them to challenge vertically and spread you out. But the running back room last year was the batteries for the offense. I mean, they ran the football more often than they threw the football. They were balanced. It was run to set up the pass. Dylan Sampson, I was really impressed with last year. Expect him to continue to keep this thing rolling in 2023. I think the running back room is solid. My question is, are they able to have the same amount of success they had last year to be able to challenge vertically? And those things kind of go hand in hand. Like, if you can hit on the deep shots, that loosens up what the safeties have to do and their responsibilities in run support. But I think you'll see a lot of what you saw last year with the frequency and the variations of run schemes that they have. I talked to StatCap, who is legally known as Clark Brooks. I think we're still trying to get the full legal name change, Nick, to have his name, like to have his ID stay StatCat. But he was really impressed with the variations and the distribution of how Tennessee ran the football, meaning they were running power one way, they were running zone one way, and not just were they running those plays, but they were running them the same amount of the time. So typically, to break it down a little bit more in depth, teams have tendencies. Like, for example, Michigan last year, they loved running power. They ran power until you made them stop it. For Tennessee, they ran power a lot. They ran outside zone a lot. They ran inside zone a lot. They ran counter a lot. So what I'm saying is they schematically make it very difficult on you as a defense to settle into any tendency and just expect one thing for them to do. So for Tennessee, they're going to run the football well again this coming season. I fully believe that. And I don't think Joe Milton will actually be quite as involved as Hendon Hooker was. I don't think he'll ad-lib quite as much. But I do think you could see him on some short yardage plays, having designed quarterback power or read option whenever you get in the red zone and need a few yards. But to put it bluntly, Tennessee's going to run the football really well again this coming season, Nick.
What do you say, two more?
Let's do two more, man.
Okay, two more. Man, there are a lot. First one, D. Taylor was asking, JD, do you watch any other college football YouTubers, and if so, who?
Ooh, that's a good question, man. So I originally came up watching a lot of RJ Young. Really have enjoyed his stuff and what he did in the early days, especially. I mean, dude is just, an almanac when it comes to the college football sphere. I love Josh Pate. I mean, we get a lot of Josh Pate comments in our comment section. I think Josh Pate is the best in the industry when it comes to this sphere. And a really quick story about Josh Pate. He was someone that I reached out to early on when I was doing independent and would just ask for little inputs on, hey, when you're, structuring your show, how do you go about it? Or when you're putting together different, concepts with your pieces, how do you go about it? And so he's been someone that's been very, very kind to me in terms of asking for input on different topics. And like I said, one of the best, if not the best in the whole industry. So I really enjoy watching him and all that he does. In terms of other shows, Andy Staples, man, I cannot believe we got him to On 3. Like, someone that I've listened to for a long period of time now at On 3 and getting to be someone that I call a colleague is exceptional. So I think those are just a few names, probably not an exhaustive list, but Josh Pate and what he's done to Andy Staples are two guys that I listen to and enjoy their work consistently.
JD, last question.
Let's do it, baby.
A lot of people in here asking questions. If we didn't get to it today, come back on Thursday. It's usually a little lighter in the live chat on Thursday, so we'll hope to get to it then. But Maximus1318 asked, what do you really think the Mike Norvell ceiling will be at Florida State?
The Mike Norvell ceiling at Florida State. I think this coming season, they have every right to expect an ACC title and a college football playoff berth. Now, I'm saying they can expect that based on what they have on their roster and what they bring back production-wise. Now, doing that and expecting that are two very different things. So for his ceiling, I think he can make Florida State a playoff team. But when they go to a 12-team playoff, I think Florida State could frequent that thing. I mean, I really do. I think that's one of the reasons why you extended him. And when they start getting that rolling on the recruiting trail, that's when I think Florida State fans really can start puffing out their chest a little bit more. Because you did it 1 year, and that's great, and you're excited about that, and there's expectations, and there's buzz. Like, there hasn't been in a minute here for Florida State. But when they can start stacking classes and they can start having some depth, that's when I think Florida State becomes really, really dangerous. So, I mean, at a place like Florida State, you don't have a ceiling because things that would hamstring you other places, you don't have them at Florida State. You're not hamstrung by resources consistently. Now, the key thing to watch here, as I say that, they are not hamstrung by resources, but they don't have the same resources as some of the other teams in the SEC and the Big Ten. And that's why I'm keeping such a close eye on them when it comes to the next domino to fall in conference realignment, because they've been very vocal. Hey, we got to get paid more money. We bring in too much to the ACC to not get as much out of it. So that's a bit of a tangent there when it comes to the realignment. But for Mike Norvell and Florida State, just for this coming season, there is no ceiling for them, and I fully expect them to be an ACC title contender and a college football playoff contender. So we'll leave it at that. Now, are they going to beat Georgia this year? You know, we'll see. They might be limited there, but I think they have every reason to expect that they can have a real shot at making the college football playoff, Nick. Great question, man. Great question. Nick, I appreciate you holding it down, man. Appreciate you holding it down. Appreciate you just being vulnerable there, too, and sharing your batting average. I have the utmost confidence you will be back over 700 by the next time we get on the air here.
Yeah, big game tomorrow. Kicking Nuggets versus us, so we'll see how it goes.
Wow. All right. Yep. In prime time?
Oh, it's in prime time.
Yeah, that was a dumb question. Nick, appreciate you, man.
See you, man.
Nick Brake, heavy lifter extraordinaire, keeper of the queue, doing everything that you see here, making it happen. Listen, just to be real, we appreciate y'all so much. We appreciate y'all being a part of this operation. We appreciate y'all tuning in when you have a million things going on and joining this college football community just to talk ball. If you're new here, welcome, subscribe, like the show, all that. We talk ball every single day, and we do it on a year-round basis. All right? We're not a show that goes away for a period of time during the summer months, or maybe we take a break. Like, no, we talk ball every day. Those live shows will be here. Rain, shine, snow, sleet, whatever it is, we're locked in here. And we're very, very grateful to have you all a part of this. That is a very, very cool thing and not something that we take for granted by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're back on the air Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Come join us then. Get back in the live chat. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.